My name is Nicholas Postlethwaite, and it's my privilege to introduce Kemi and Natasha to you. There's a wonderful statement that you all know in the prophet Joel, in the second chapter of Joel, where he says, "And afterwards I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your old men will dream dreams. Your sons and daughters will see visions." And as we know, St. Peter, on one of his first sermons, which is recorded in the Acts, has no hesitation in borrowing from Joel, because he says exactly the same thing as he's announcing the birth of the new kingdom. And I have no hesitation, if Peter can do it, so can I, following their examples, in presuming to introduce two wonderful young women whom I feel privileged to count as friends. They are two women making the prophecies of both Joel and Peter tangible and real today, just down the road from here, not very far from where we are now. In fact, as they may mention, an early episode in Kemi and Natasha's story actually took place here in this very building. They actually did exams in this very room. So they can't be that young, can they? And after leaving Belrive, their story continued with many adventures, ups and downs, sometimes wonderful, sometimes frightening and challenging. And it's a story continuing today as they build their unique project, a project they call Reformed CIC. And they will tell us why they chose that name. And I think we're fortunate to have the two of them here today at this conference with the theme of reconciliation. They both have a vision. It's a reconciling vision. It's a vision which recognises and honours the deep expressions of the spirit of freedom, the spirit of love and justice, particularly when that spirit is conflicted by powers threatening to inhibit or restrict life in its fullness, particularly life as experienced by those pushed into isolation or vulnerability. Kemi and Natasha are committed to the life of the Spirit, especially Spirit lived at the edges. So along with my friend Frida, who's over there, we feel immensely privileged and constantly challenged as we share the continuing journey of Kemi and Natasha Ryan, who, in my view, midwife, nurture and mature their vision within the complexities of the local and global realities today. So I shall be surprised if you're not inspired and challenged by their story. Thank you, Kemi and Natasha, for being with us today, and now over to you.
First of all, I'd just like to say thank you for giving us the opportunity and the pleasure to be able to broadcast and also give you a little bit of an insight of where we're coming from, what we represent and what's happening in this current time and now. We spoke about challenges and we spoke about conflict and we spoke about all of the horrible things happening in society, but we never spoke about now. Now, basically, before I go into it, I'm going to give you just a little brief background about myself and Natasha. Basically, as Nick said, it was this room here, we did our exams. It was actually called St. Mary's and then changed into the name Belrive, I think a year before I was leaving. Now, I'm not going to say I was the perfect student, but I never got expelled and I never got suspended neither. So, I'm just giving you a brief profile. Now, a lot of people say to me and Tasha, "I can't believe you've been to prison." Now, I know I've said it out shortly, but I was explaining it, what I do it all the time. Now, it had nothing to do with the school, by the way. Basically, what it had to do with is that, unfortunately, we come from a community called Toxteth, And a lot of people have a lot of negative perceptions on toxic, where I have a lot of positive perceptions, because we live in a society where good and bad work hand in hand, and it's just unfortunately because of the colour of our community and what we've had to endure and fight over the years, it's become more of a negative than a positive. Now I sit here today because I love my community and I love the people in it. It's just unfortunate people weren't given the opportunities to excel. Basically, I come from a community where most role models were drug dealers. Most people you're inspired to were drug dealers. Now, that's going to sound very bizarre and think, oh, bloody hell, that's not very good. But what you've got to understand is our unique community is coming from a community where people it was an abomination to educate people like me. It was an abomination to give opportunities to people like me, and it was also an abomination to be able to be looked at as the same as who I'm looking at right now in this room. I'm actually a bit more privileged because I was born in 1982, which was a year after the riot, so I'm the result and the product of the aftermath, so I actually didn't experience the riots. Now, the reason I'm bringing up the riots is because we spoke about Northern Ireland. Now, as I said to Nick before, I remember growing up and seeing the news and all of this conflict about Northern Ireland, but I didn't really understand it. I was only young, and unfortunately, the people around me never sat down and told me about it. And as it was mentioned before, because it actually wasn't in Liverpool, even though it was in Ireland, which is in England, because it weren't a direct result of us, I don't think I actually took interest in it and the people around me, which is so sad, but it's the reality of things. People go through their own circumstances. Now, sorry. The reason I'm touching on the riots is because that was a conflict, and it's a conflict that still remains now. Now, a lot of people have invested in the toxic community, and a lot of people have invested in giving young people opportunities and restructuring the community and turning negatives into positives, but unfortunately it still remains. It remains in a sense that it's a little bit more, I don't want to use the word worse because it's work in process. It's a little bit, it's a job that needs restructuring and redoing, and I think Reform's the right people. I think we've come to a time in this time where we need to look on individuals and not look in a black and white way. We're now dealing in this time, in the 2018, with kids that are on the spectrum. Now, if anyone is aware of it, we're talking about kids with ADHD, we're talking about kids with autism, we're talking about kids with trauma, we're talking about kids that have just got trauma because they're coming from disadvantaged families. Now, I think it's so unfortunate that them kids are actually being discriminated and they're actually not getting the opportunities as the same rights as other kids. And this is why I sit here today. I sit here today not only to represent rehabilitation, because I'm a lady, a black lady with a conviction. I'm here to bring about change, because if this change would have been put in place, I may not be sitting here talking about being a black lady with a conviction. I may have to be sitting here saying a black lady that is such and such and take out of the conviction. So I think it's very important that myself, Tasha and Reformed as an organisation challenge these things. Now, I'm aware of the time, so I'm going to pass over to Tasha until I come back in, but thank you.
Thank you, Kemi. Following on from what Kemi says, I'm just going to do a little bit of a touch-up on mine and Kemi's personal journey, how Reform came about, and some of the experiences that we faced and how we overcome some of the challenges that we overcome in order to sit here today and be supporting some of the people that we support. As Kemi said, we actually got 8 years. We were 18 and 19. So as you can imagine, to be told at the age of 18 and 19 that you're actually going to be incarcerated for 8 years is a pretty daunting thing, to say the least. It was petrifying, it was scary, and for all those people who don't know what prison's like, I can tell you it's a rack of emotions. I went through a lot of dark days in there, but also there was hope. And I'm going to give you a quick story of our first week in prison. that actually I reflect on even today, and it's kind of helped me shape where we are today. And I had a conversation with someone, because we're currently in the process of writing a book on our journey, and someone reminded me that actually Reform started when we actually went into prison, not when we were released. And I'll tell you why. Me and Kemi actually went into prison, and despite, being 18 and 19, we were always helpers. We always liked to help people. We wasn't bad, despite, the sentence people would stereotype. If someone's got 8 years, these are horrific people. But we wasn't bad. We always helped people. We were me and Kemi laugh now. We used to actually cook my mum's contents to the freezer and feed it to the street. That was the type of people we are. So we ended up in Holloway, and for those of you who know what Holloway's like, it was the worst female prison. It's just been knocked down, but it was, it had a bit of a reputation. Me and Kemi were in there about 2 days, and we noticed that there was this young lady from Athens, and she wasn't eating. She'd actually been starving herself for 5 days. This was the 5th day. As a result, she was on what they call a 2052, which is where the officers keep an eye on her to make sure that she's okay. Despite me and Kemi being through our own issues and, wondering what our fate was going to be, we recognised the fact that someone needed help. And what me and Kemi done was, in actual fact, took this young lady under our wing. And as a result, she started to eat again. And me and Kemi were rewarded within the prison system, and we were given enhanced statements. We didn't know what it meant at the time, I'm going to just say. We didn't realise what it meant till 2 years down the line, but it was actually a big privilege, including you get your own towel, which is actually a luxury in places like that. So when we reflect back, the journey started in there, but what was actually important for me and Kemi is we got to know ourselves. We got to look into our strengths and weaknesses. We also got to assess the reason why we were actually in the place where we'd ended up. And when we ended up with such a harsh sentence, I actually thought I couldn't do it, I'm not going to lie. I remember the day like it was yesterday, and I remember talking to Kemi about it, and I said, I can't do this. And I remember saying that statement because when you're young and when you're 18, next week seems like a lifetime. So for me to have to do 5 birthdays, 5 Christmases, all these big occasions, 5 of them away, it was too much for my brain to comprehend. And me and Kemi used to talk about it all the time, and I actually found I found a solution. I did. I had my own little strategy on how I used to deal with things. But I also I've grew up from a religious background, so I've always been aware of religion. I didn't embrace it as much as I could and as much as I do now. But I remember starting to embrace it while I was locked up, and one of the first things, I sit back now and think, but one of the first things I thought of was, God doesn't give you more than you can bear. So before I got the 8 years, I was convinced I was going home, to the point where I give all my clothes away, because God doesn't give you more than you can bear. And that was me in my own little bubble. So when I ended up with 8 years, I was like, God doesn't give you more than you can bear. I can't bear this. I could bear it. God doesn't give you more than you can bear. I didn't realise I could bear it. And in order for me to do the great work that I do now, I had to go through a process. I didn't realise at the time. I can fully understand now, and I wouldn't change my journey for anyone. But at the same time, it was full of obstacles and hardship, and I can't ignore that. The reason why I can't ignore that is because there's a lot of people that we represent that are trying to turn negatives into positives, that are prevented because of the stigma, because of the discrimination, because of the lack of opportunities. And for me and Kemi, it was a lot easier. I'd say easier on one sense. It's never easy, but it was easier for me because I had the comfort of my sister. So for me, I always reflect on the people that don't have that comfort of having another person. Where would they be? Who's their voice? So my job become equally, well, it's not a job. We say, I used to say a job, it's a mission and it's a passion. It becomes all that more important because we're actually representing a lot of people whose voices aren't heard, who want to make positive changes, who are trying, but the doors are constantly getting slammed in the face. And for me, that can create a lot of negative issues reflecting on individuals, i.e. mental health, you know, worthlessness, addiction. These are things people don't necessarily look into, but these are things that we see within our organisation on a day-to-day basis. So what me and Kemi wanted to do is we wanted to be the change. We wanted to be the representation of the change, and we knew we were reformed. There was no question about it. My mindset was away from committing any form of crime. What I wanted to do is I wanted to represent the change, and one of the first things we spoke about was how are we going to do that? We need to be the best we can be. We need people to see that these girls have made mistakes, but by God, these are doing some great things to help people, and these have turned their negative into a positive, and these have gone on to do great things. Not only that, not only supporting the individuals, it's important to actually support the people who are making the decisions within the criminal justice system. It's important to educate the people who are actually giving employment to people with conviction or lack of employment, educate them on changing their mindsets to see what are the barriers that prevent them from giving people employment, and these are the things that we started to explore. Now, I just want to take you a little back, just a tiny bit, just to make you understand our journey. When me and Kemi were first released from prison, we didn't want to open a business. We wanted a job. That was what we wanted. And we went to probation, and you know, we sat down and we said, how are we going to do this? And we come up with this fantastic strategy. I mean, for me, back in the day, with my naivety, I thought it was genius. We'll work voluntary. People will say these are fantastic, and everyone will want to give us a job. I thought it's a win-win-win-win, you know, situation. Unfortunately, 4 years worth of voluntary work and no job opportunity, you start to think, well, actually, maybe the job's not coming. So we sat down and we said, well, what's a way in which we can reach out and help people, support what we want in terms of moving our passion forward, but protect ourselves, because we realised very quickly that we needed protecting. We were the ones with the criminal records. We were the ones that had been branded in the newspaper. We were the ones that had got this negative light casted on us, and we needed to kind of change it. So how could we protect ourselves? So we said, we'll set up a business. I mean, it sounds pretty blasé because we didn't have a lot of business education, but in our mindset, it was a way in which we could move what we wanted to move, which was our passion, forward. So we said, right, that's what we're going to do. We set up a business. We re-educated ourselves. We trained as teachers. We're both qualified teachers, and we've done that all through working within the organisation. So it hasn't been easy. And to be honest with you, we've been up against some pretty harsh opinions in the past, because there's a lot of fixed perceptions of, you know, on people like myself and whether we can change, and some people question a leper can never change the spot, and you know, there's all kinds of opinions, but we continue to represent because we believe that if people can continue to see the change, they'll start to believe in it, and ultimately more people from, you know, disadvantaged backgrounds or with criminal records or, you know, with not the best start in life can, you know, get more of the opportunities to reach out and fulfill their passion. So that's you know, us in a nutshell. And I want to hand back over to Kemi so she can talk a little bit about my ending on this. Kemi's just going to give a little quick 2 minutes, and then I'm just going to come back and read something to you and leave you with a final thought, if that's okay. We got the invitation a while back about being involved in what's happening today, and me and Tasha was saying, oh, what are we going to talk about, and you know the rejection, because this is the thing about me and Tasha, because this is a mission
and we have to bear the criticism and the stigma, which we don't mind because God only gives you what he can bear, believe me. Basically, me and Tasha are always, before doing these sorts of things and having a meeting, we always have a little talk about the things that we always have to challenge, because every day is a challenge to me and Tasha. The reason it doesn't show and we've got a happy face is because we believe in the vision and we're used to the challenge, and it's only made us stronger and the people we are today. So when it comes to criticism and when it comes to challenge, me and Tasha sort of look at it a little bit in a positive way rather than a negative way, because we have to be challenged. We're representing, and we're representing something that not everyone will agree with, and even if they do agree with, we're always going to have critics, so it's important that we do challenge. Me and Tasha wanted to leave you with something that would remain in your minds, because we like to leave people with a thought of who we are and what we represent. So me and Tasha also write. We write poems, and the early beginning of our journey, we were so frustrated that we didn't want to act in a negative way, so we used to write. We used to write together, and after we finished writing, we'd feel like a breath of fresh air, because all of that animosity had gone on paper, but we'd use words that weren't offensive. So me and Tasha have been going through some of our poems we've wrote over the last 10 years, and last night we decided that this was going to be the right poem. It's called The Tears of the Aftermath of Crime, and it was written by myself, Kemi Ryan, and Natasha Ryan in 2016. Now Tasha is out of the both of us. She said she would read it and she would represent the both of us. So I'd just like to leave you with this, so you'll always remember, this is a negative turns into the positive, and this isn't a job, this is a mission. Thank you.
I'm in an illusion, I'm in a dream, wake me up. Pinch me, pour water on me, even open the curtains and pull back the covers. Make me know this is not real. Friday the 13th of April 2007 is where my real sentence begun. I feel excited, I feel anxious, I feel joyous. I feel overwhelmed, but most of all, I feel scared. The first tear drops, the tear of joy, which quickly turns into the tear of sorrow, which quickly turns into the tears of reality, which in turn creates mental health worthlessness and no existence. But tears are just like the ocean, salty deep, and tell a story that no one can tell. As life continues to crash against us like the waves of the sea, we continue to hold on to our life jackets with no thought of not surviving, but surviving. And as we ride the storm, we await the calm, still battling the thunder while the seagulls continue to pray. But in the distance, among the crashes of the sea, we see a light. So bright, is this the light of hope? Or is it an illusion of my mind playing games, tormenting me to think it's come to an end while the storm is still brewing under cover? No, this is real. The light in the distance has led us to the sea of hope, where the sun shines bright and the waves disappear. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Was I right in saying that you would be impressed?
Yeah.
I mean, we've got a couple of minutes, and I know they were asking before whether we needed a roving mic, and I sort of said no, I didn't think so, but there would be time for 5 minutes perhaps for any questions that people would like to ask. And if you can't be heard, I'll try and repeat the question. Oh, that was the mic. I mean, if I can just say a little bit, I mean, I forget when we first met. Myself and my friend Frida and I have worked together with young people in Liverpool 8 since 1971-72. And we thought we were retired, and then these two came along. And one of our anxieties about the two of you which you know very well, is that they were in danger of actually being snowed under. They had a little shop front in the middle of Toxteth, and whenever you went in, it was always jam-packed with young people and with older people. And the strength of the two of them is that they've got an ability, perhaps out of their experience and their own unique personalities, of communicating directly, very directly, with young people. And that results in young people who, particularly who are deprived and haven't got very many places where they can go, they all pile in. They'd be coming in through the windows, they'd be coming in through the doors, they weren't having to, and they had no money. One of them, I won't say which, had a gas stove that wouldn't shut properly. The door wouldn't shut, so it was condensed, so there was no gas stove. So they've not been doing it for money. They've been scraping along with absolutely nothing. And part of the frustration is that there is a lot of money around in areas like Toxteth, but where is it going to? And is where the money's going to delivering the job that it's supposed to be doing when you've got people like Natasha and Kemi who are actually communicating and are valued and are believed by the local community. So there's a personal dimension, but there's a huge political dimension as well, which they are both aware of. We've persuaded them to take a little step back. They've come out of their shop front in Crawford House, not because they weren't happy there, but because they needed a little bit of time to think through how do we actually handle all that's happening. I mean, they were on television this week, the other night. Believe it or not, they missed it, I missed it. We knew that they were coming on, and we didn't notice. People have been ringing up sort of saying, we saw you on the television. You've had interviews in national newspapers, you've been on other television, because there are not many young black women working at the shop face, at the coal face in the way that they are. And people recognise that. But whether it's recognised in a way that gives them support and is an ongoing thing is another matter. Sorry, I was suggesting that there'd be questions and then I never shut up. Does anybody want to ask a question? Yeah, okay. There's a mic coming. Just put your hand up again, please.
I just wonder, can you hear me?
No, it's not on.
I just wonder how you can, do you measure your degree of success when you work with young people, and how do you measure it? You know, the progress that they make with you, because obviously the work that you do must be very valuable. Do you measure how your success rate, or do you measure how the young people have turned their lives around?
Within our organisation, we do measure our progress. We always continually measure our progress because we think it's important. Now, when I say we measure our progress, we actually get our beneficiaries involved in that process because we like to keep them at the forefront of the work we do at all times. There's a lot of things we can't measure, like with a lot of the preventative work that we do. Sometimes we can't measure it till years down the line. That's just the way it works. But when it comes to our first-hand experience packages and our empowerment workshops and all that we do within the groundwork in terms of the outreach and the community engagement, we continually measure that, and the reason why is because the issues can change from day to day. And working in the areas that we work in, because we always get that information first-hand from people who are directly affected, we have to make sure that we're responding and keeping on top of current issues in order to support the people to the best of our ability.
Could you give us some information about other agencies that you work with?
Okay. Sorry. First of all, because we work with the young people and we work with the parents, we actually have quite a good role because it's actually most of the schools the young people go to. Our organisation supports that, so it's usually the schools. We usually go on social service meetings too, so the social services, There's the schools that are joint in, and there's various organisations in the community, like the councillor of the borough of the borough where we are, where we was in Toxteth, which is the Princess Borough. That was supported by Anna Rothery, one of the councillors. Also Joe Anderson, he's also been down to our place and as match funded too. To be truthful, I'm quite happy you brought that question up, because I'm going to be very truthful, because if I'm not truthful, that means that this is not a mission and I'm not representing change. One of the other issues we have with our journey, because this is a journey, not a ride, is that due to the fact that me and Tasha have criminal convictions and we're black and we're female, so we're talking about 3 discriminations here. Me and Tasha get a lot of institutionalised discrimination. So apart from representing change and apart from building and have built an organisation that's been successful since 2009, was formed in 2009 and was established in 2011, I don't think we've done pretty bad. The problem is, like Nick picked up on, is me and Tasha have been on this journey for over 10 years. And we've been on this journey without no money practically. And the issue is when we're talking about change makers, we're talking about change like a round circle. We need to change the mindsets of the people that have the power to open doors up for the individuals like myself. We need to change the mindsets of people that give opportunities to myself and the people we engage with. So when we're talking about who do you work with, I'd actually like to answer that question in the next 10 to 20 years to see if there's actually been progress in that. So thank you for asking me that change, but this is all work in process, this is a mission.
I think we're actually one last question.
Well, in view of that, I was getting late, but in view of that question, do you see progress?
Of course, if I never seen progress, I wouldn't be sat here today. Me and Natasha have a vision, and we have a strong vision, and no one for 10 years sacrificed what me and Tasha has, and still we rise today, but out not believing in our vision, not believing in ourselves, and not believing that something must come out of this. As I was talking to the lady when we were eating our lunch earlier, and I said to her, even if I die, it's about legacy. This is about change. This is not just about me. It was in the beginning, because I was the one feeling discriminated about being a British citizen and thinking that the Rehabilitation Act states that when an individual has been released and completed a licence, they should be able to live a law-abiding life like everyone else. Unfortunately, to me, that's fabricated, and it's the system. But the reason that there will always be progress is because I have got an army on board, and there is always going to be people that feel rejected like me, and there's always going to be young people that need support. As long as we keep reforms alive, and as long as we remain within power and strength and get as much people on board, there'll always be progress. There will always be progress, because this is not about myself or Tasha. This is a mission. This is about even if I'm here or I'm not here. So, basically, it's okay.
Can you hear the echo of Joel and Peter and the Spirit poured out? Thanks very much for listening, and let's get on with the afternoon.